And welcome. It's another Hot Topic Tuesday. We're hanging out in the wonderful land of the North, like way up north in Lapeer today. Hanging out with a great group here. As I always put it, it's great to see faces, but it's better to see faces. So thanks for hanging out and coming on with me. Today, what do we got? May 13th. You realize we're coming up to where we're halfway through the year. Hopefully that means we got everything scheduled. We're halfway to our income goals. Kind of scary when you think about it. So as you take a look at the screen, you see my twire, this week in real estate. And as I kind of put it into promotion, it's been about, I think, 6 or 7 weeks, because we've been into Sky Slope, had a couple other opportunities to be able to get some people. I didn't want to, lose, I guess I would put it, because we had the opportunity. So let's start with, I think is going to be an interesting piece of news for you. Some of you may have heard. Now I'm going to dangle it for a second. Let me just say, next week currently, and I was sharing with the gang here, there's a reason we call it Hot Topic Tuesday. So it's always subject to change, because if something else comes up, we'll change it. It's the reason that a few years back when we started Hot Topic that I called it Hot Topic, because what's going on. So I don't normally try to schedule anything out more than a couple of weeks in advance. So next week, earnest money deposits. We're going to talk about that in full, so that we really understand when, how they get handled. What if there's a dispute? What if there is no dispute? How does all of that happen? What goes on if we ever have problems? But more importantly, when should we be receiving earnest money deposits? How should we be receiving earnest money deposits? So that's next week. But a note, the 27th, we won't have a Hot Topic. That's the day after Memorial Day. A lot of people stay on vacation. So if you're extended vacation, enjoy the weekend. But know that, put it in your calendar, there is no Hot Topic on 27th. Compensation agreements. What are we talking about? This is group participation time. Broker compensation agreements. What are we talking about? How we get paid from other brokers, but more importantly, the other side. It's really, we're talking about, I have signed an agreement with a buyer. I get paid because I have this agreement, but then how do they want to pay us? Well, a broker compensation agreement, as we've called it, a cooperating broker compensation agreement, is what we're looking about. So what I'd ask you is how are you currently handling it? When you're on the listing side, what are you seeing? What are you receiving when you get an offer? What are you getting? And by the way, we can participate here or we can participate out there. What is it again? It's always written in the PA, and the highest percentage of the time, I won't put a number in, who are they saying is going to pay it? Seller. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys out in Zoom land here would all agree that's what we're running into mostly. I can tell you, having managed, reviewed a whole lot of files, rarely did one come in asking the listing broker to pay. Right? Everybody, I did get one, real estate one did throw one out one time. I'll tell you, my experience is, including on our own side, and don't take this the wrong way, but I'm going to use the term ignorant. Now, that simply means a lack of knowledge. That's not derogatory. It's a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of a misunderstanding. So most of the time when I've seen that, it's been because they don't understand. Matter of fact, the comment was, well, no, my broker says I have to have this. And we could argue that, yeah, but you put that the seller's going to pay it. If we signed both, what did we commit ourselves to? The seller paying it, and then out of what we've received, we would also be paying it as what we've committed ourselves to. So when I talk about that, that's the part where I'm saying there's a lack of understanding. It's ignorance, okay? So knowing that, That's the circumstances. And then let me throw this to you. National Association of Realtors, the term procuring cause. Most of us would understand procuring cause. If we're brand new, probably not. But procuring cause in simplest terms says, who is the individual who introduced this buyer to the property? And if it was that individual, they're the ones who should be compensated. And who compensates them? The listing broker. So, what changed with procuring cause in the National Association of Realtors? And if you're going, I don't know, it's because nothing changed. So now I want you to think about that with what we just said. If we were to sign a cooperating broker compensation agreement, okay, and there was procuring cause, we've compensated who we thought was the procuring cause. They brought the offer. We signed a broker compensation agreement, says, yeah, we'll compensate you. Another agent comes along, files arbitration, wins in arbitration. Who's got to pay him? We, the listing broker. So we've already paid once, and now we'd have to pay again. And the issue being that NAR has not changed anything on procuring cause after we've got the settlement taking place. So here's the reason I give you all that. I had to pre-sell you in the beginning. Oh, by the way, one other thought. Everybody's pretty much had a closing. Who paid the compensation? Regardless of what you've written, regardless of what you had agreed upon. It's always showing the seller. Title companies and Alta, whoever the lead source is, who kind of says, here's the way that all you title companies should do this, just says, just show the seller. They're not actually showing a paper trail. You get where I'm going with all of this. So the question is, now that we are where we are, do we really need the broker compensation agreement between two brokers? And the answer is no. Now, we don't need to change anything. Our purchase agreements are set up, as you can see here, that we're always checking that the seller's going to contribute. And by the way, this is written very specifically for a reason. Because as a brokerage, we're saying that, look, our purchase agreement says the seller was going to give 3% to the buyer so that the buyer could then pay us. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but that's the reason this purchase agreement is written as it is. That's to help cover us. If we were really enforcing this with the title company, we would have the title company show a debit of the 3% with a credit to the buyer. It would then show the debit on the buyers paying us, because that's what it says. Okay, so we've done that very intentionally. That's going to cover us in the future if anything were to come directly after us. Is a realtor organization going to cover us? I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but this will help us. So what I want you to do, or what I want you to notice is I put the red line through the listing broker. That's I'm going to say that's our last choice. Future, I would probably see that we're going to put that down as the third item. We'll actually reorganize those so that it is the seller to contribute. Next, it would be the buyer. And then as a last option, which frankly, I don't know why, is we're all getting used to this. We all understand it. Why would we as a listing broker sign it anyway? Why would we want to be responsible? Because just you're giving it to the seller to then give it to us. In reality, I want you to picture this. If it said the listing broker, where should the compensation literally come from? Literally. From the listing broker. we would be receiving a check from the listing broker. That's not happening. So you may be hearing this for the very first time, and it's going to spread. But listen, this is covering you and us as a brokerage so that we don't end up having to figure out how to later take care of compensation. Okay? Any questions out there at all or in here?
Yeah, Darwin, this is John Goings.
Yes, sir.
So I just dropped in and I saw that and I took a picture of that. Are you requesting us then to cross that out and just mark the seller side?
Yeah, you don't need to cross it out. I just wanted to highlight it here that that's a last resort for us. If you
Okay.
simply check the seller, and my box slid on me here, but we want to check off seller to contribute.
Thank you. And can you explain or go over number 8 as well to explain it better to everybody?
You know what? It's kind of interesting, John. So yeah, everybody good that we slip off on this? Say yes. Oh, you guys are
I get
awesome.
a quick question before you do.
Okay, go ahead, Valerie.
So, buyer will pay, do we normally do that then on a cash?
Ah, this is a great question. Actually, we were talking about it with just a couple of people beforehand. So I want you to think about this, guys. If it's a cash offer, what might be the best way for us to handle the buyer broker compensation when we're representing the buyer, they're paying cash? What might be the best way to handle that? You could offer 3% less and just say, my buyer is paying it. We, the buyer, are paying it. Because now they're going to save a few bucks. The seller's going to save a few bucks. It might actually be a better way of formulating it, because if you will, when they're paying cash, we'd be simply going, okay, seller, here's all this money. And then they pay the buyer broker. Why not go, here's this money and we'll take care of the buyer broker? It may save money, but if you just think about it, if it's dropped by a $300,000 house at 3% is $9,000. You could reduce your price potentially, because now it's not having to be given to the seller to give it to the broker. It's going, here's yours and here's theirs. And of course, the price is now lower. There may be financial benefits to both the seller and the buyer in the future.
Did that in a situation, and the listing agent was having trouble explaining to her older seller how this was working and maybe benefiting her, so it could create an issue. There were other things here that didn't work out. But
and it's like
one thing, she's like, I can't help her explain that, this is working out. You're getting less money, but it's just confusing.
There's going to be, I'll tell you, not only will there be sellers who won't understand what we just talked about, there will be agents who won't understand that simple process. Yep. And yet, when I first started, Jack, we're talking concessions. When I first started teaching about what this settlement was going to do, I was bringing concessions and going, well, think of your compensation the same way. It just did not register how much that was the same thing. But yeah, guys, you know me, KISS principle. I'm always looking for the simple, right? That's what we want to look to. So do what's easiest. So if you got a situation like what Jim just ran into, and you got a seller or an agent who just can't understand it, look, it's not worth the hassle. Just say, okay, well, just give us 3%, your seller can pay it. Here's the price. Because sometimes they just can't see 3 from 100 is 97, and 97 plus 3 is 100. Therefore, it equals the same thing. Sometimes it is too easy. Let me go over here.
What happens if you have listing contract and the listing contract is 6%? And then you have a buyer come in and they're willing to pay the buyer's commission. What happens to that?
Okay.
3% listing.
So this is a great question, you guys, and it's like, we'll see. Maybe our whole time is spent on this because it draws these additional questions. So here's what Holly just brought up here in Lapeer. We sign, we'll just take it for what we actually do, right? We sign a listing agreement with a seller that says we get 6%. They then, and it says direct, and John, I haven't forgot about you, but it says, I direct you, the listing broker, to offer 3% to buyers, brokers, and 3% to transaction coordinators. That's what we want you to be able to do. We do not compensate sub-agents. Now, why is it on there then, Darwin? Well, there's rare circumstances where sometimes that may be an option. And we know the agent, it's safe. I'm going to put it that way. Okay. Well, but why would we offer the same to a transaction coordinator? They don't represent anybody. Yeah, but they're still doing all the same services. They just don't owe the fiduciary responsibility. So we're going to offer the same to the buyer broker and the transaction coordinator. But then what happens when Holly is my listing agent and Jake brings the buyer? But Jake, his buyer says, we'll pay it ourselves. Well, here's what we need to know. We're not going to charge any more than what the intent was for our net. It's 3%. That's really what we're charging. And we're not going to charge the full 6%. We just know we're getting 3%, and the buyer's taking care of the other 3% that we were directed to offer. Okay? Because if you think about it, they owe us 6%, and then they assign a purchase agreement that says the seller's going to pay 3%. That's 9%, but that's not what we're doing. Because we know the intent, and that is a company, we're not going to do that. And because the intent is that we get 3%, and of that 6%, we can offer 3%. Here's the reason that it's written that way. We're going to take Jake out of the picture. Holly lists it, and then Holly is fortunate enough to sell it. Does she have to represent the buyer? No. Then how does she get paid? From the seller. How much does the seller say that they would pay? It's the reason we got to have it that way. So I will tell you that, quite frankly, we just haven't found verbiage, nor is the state, because I just looking into this, I keep an eye on it. State hasn't made any adjustment for it either. But again, here's what we know. We're only going to take what our actual intent is, which is to net our 3%. Make sense? Okay. So John asked very quickly, can we explain paragraph 8? And I don't know if John, if you're asking for a particular reason, but there was something that this has been for us. Gosh, Renee, Bill, forever. I think paragraph 8 has had the not applicable. But let me throw something out to you, because I had a title person going, Darwin, why is this here? As a title company, we're always collecting a fee. So let's read it. It says that when a sale is lender financed and the closing fee charged by the closing agent. Now, we're not talking title. We're talking document prep, to pay the fees, to pay the person closing it, to handle all that stuff. There's a fee that most of the time it's a title company charges. It's that one fee. Everybody good? Just give me that little head nod, and that tells me most of you know what that is too. Okay. Well, it says that when it's financed, that the buyer is going to pay that. The buyer is going to pay that fee when it's financed. But it then says when that sale is cash or seller financed. How many title policies are there? 1. Jake, you'll remember this. Anybody new? There's a owner's policy and there's a mortgage or a lender's policy of title insurance. If we're getting financing, there would be that second title policy and potential of a second title company. But cash or land contract, purchase money mortgage, there's only 1. So now there's that closing fee, and it says in that circumstance, How will it be handled? And we have three options. So as this title person brought up to me, she said, when is this ever not applicable? As we update this purchase agreement, that'll go away. Because as you read this, if it's a finance, buyer pays it. If it's seller financed or cash, then one of three options, how are you going to handle it? Not applicable is not necessary. It's just not necessary. So, John, did that kind of take care of what you were looking for on that?
Yes, it did.
Perfect.
Because I know there's
Perfect.
been some questions on that regarding either the seller covering it or the buyer covering it. And usually if it is a cash sale, it's a lot cheaper from the lender doing it simultaneously with the listing title.
That's it. Yep. Yep. All right. So let me go on. Normally it is the buyer because it's mortgage, but on a cash seller financed, in this market,
There's not
I would tell you it's kind of customary to an area, which is why those three options are on there. Yet, and by the question, the question was, is in those three options, what's, we'll call it normal, what's customary for the area, I think is what you want to look at. But if I'm in a competing situation, it might make sense that my buyer pay that. If I'm making a great offer, there's no competition, let me take care of my buyer and have the seller pay it. But it's same, but we're talking a couple $100 normally. So not one that I'm going to over worry about, but we definitely want to make sure we take care of. Lapeer area, pretty much it's a split. Okay. So here's the thing with the compensation agreement between brokers. We're not going to sign them anymore. If you've signed them in the past, don't do that any longer. If your manager has signed it, your manager is not going to sign them any longer. If you get one and you believe it's just being, it's an absolutely necessity, go talk to your manager and find out. Because again, it's just going away. There's been other companies that said as a brokerage, we are not going to sign to pay the compensation to the buyer broker. I had a Chris early on with this and I said, look, this is where everybody else is at. I will tell you, I believe that in the future, we're going to go in the same direction. Well, as everybody got educated, everybody got the experience and everybody knows what they're doing, here we are. Okay? Everybody good with that? Any questions out there in Zoom land on it? All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this. Earnest money deposit. And I'll just, I'm going to say I ran into, fortunately not us, just with what I get an opportunity to do. I ran into an interesting one between a couple of companies. And it really shouldn't have had anything to do with earnest money deposit, but it did. And so here's what it was. This is our purchase agreement number 10. It is very similar to what is very customary across all of our offices. And here's what it says. And buyer is depositing with, now we know that's whoever's going to hold it. For us, most of the time, that is Coldwell Banker or Century 21. Coldwell Banker professionals, Century 21 professionals. Occasionally, that will be a title company. New construction. Often the builder wants to hold it. Okay? So we've left that blank so that we can name who the escrowee is. And I just put that in to kind of highlight that that's really what this is saying. And it's that we're going to deposit blank dollars. Now, it's in the form of check, money order, cashier's check, certified wires, or wired directly to the escrowee. If I put that, and I'm going to use Lapeer, so Coldwell Banker professionals, $10,000. and I put, in this case, 0 days. EMD will be collected and deposited within 0 days. When do I receive that? When they did this, hand me your check. Right? Now, ours is written this way. The reason I bring this up, others are not written this way. Others say earnest money is being deposited with the broker in the amount of $10,000. An additional blank dollars will be deposited within blank days of acceptance. That's the way I think you're going to see most of them. And this is the way that this purchase agreement was written. So if it says buyer is depositing with Coldwell Banker Professionals, well, here, let me change it. Somebody else's purchase agreement. Buyer is depositing with Schmuck Realty, okay? And somebody says, you know, that's a negative term. I'm not Jewish, so I don't know, but I've heard. But anyway, Schmo then, how's that? With Schmo Realty, $10,000. An additional blank will be delivered within blank days of acceptance. When should that agent receive that money? What are they saying? They got it. I sat across from an attorney, 2 brokers, 2 agents, and there was a total misunderstanding. So guys, here's what we know. Ours is written really clear. We're going to have it within so many days. Again, as I've looked at all the paperwork with the different things that we've done, and I pass it across the leadership team, I try to do everything so that it simplifies the understanding that there can be no misinterpretation. So if you put 0 days, that means you have it. If you put 1 day, then you've got 1 day to receive it. If it was accepted today on the 13th, then tomorrow, the 14th, you better have a check and a receipt for it. Okay? Now, again, next week, we're going to talk in depth about earnest money deposits so that we understand the full picture on it. Jim.
Within, does that include the date?
Oh, there you go, trying to create the interpretation. Within, so you've got from here to here. So the end of the day, if we did 1 day and it was accepted today, we got until the end of the day tomorrow. So it's got to be dated for today or tomorrow. It's within that window of time. Okay? Any other questions? I'll check the chat here real quick. Okay, we're good. All right. Agency is always fun. I love it. So here's a situation for you. I want you to picture this. You're representing a buyer and you have a signed agency disclosure and exclusive buyer agency, right? If I'm representing it, I have those 2 things. Okay. You go out as part of your activities and how you make your money as you find unlisted properties. This particular one is a for sale by owner. You know that you need to now disclose to the for sale by owner. What is your disclosure to the for sale by owner? I hear a buyer's agent. I got head nods, and that would be the best answer right now with what we've provided. We've reached out to that for sale by owner on behalf of the for sale or on behalf of the buyer. Therefore, I already have an agency agreement and a disclosure with the buyer that says I'm a buyer's agent. We need to disclose to all parties to a transaction whom we represent. So we're disclosing to the for sale by owner that I represent the buyer. Okay? So what do you do about getting paid? What? Well, that was simple. By the way, if you didn't hear it or you didn't say it in your own, let me confirm. Hopefully you said the buyer pays it. Guys, we already have an agreement that we've negotiated with the buyer called a buyer representation agreement or a buyer representation contract. It's already signed. We've already negotiated our compensation. It's already done. The buyer is going to pay us. That's keeping it simple. That's what the agreement says. Well, yeah, but what if the FISBO, or we'll take it any other situation, they're not willing to do that? Why not? Apparently you didn't pay enough. That's why. Yeah. Hey, want to talk more? Just let me know. But I love to drop these little hints. It's like, here's the carrot, come on. You're going to put it in the purchase agreement. Again, you've heard me say this. Does it really matter if we know how much the buyers or the seller was offering? I'm going to start dropping even at the listing broker. Does it matter how much the seller was offering? No. I got 3%. That's what I get. Okay? I'm keeping it really simple, but that's what we get. It just goes on the agreement. And then we negotiate with the seller until the seller's happy. Let's keep this simple. Okay? So now, obviously, when I bring these up, I've had these conversations. Can you be a buyer's agent and a transaction coordinator in the same transaction?
No.
With anybody, be it a for sale by owner, obviously you're looking at, you're handling both sides, right? Can I be, and Valerie, thank you for your response. Can I be both a buyer's agent and a transaction coordinator? And we'll leave it with this FISBO situation. It's a lot of you don't want to commit, and that's okay. Here's what I would tell you. No. Think of it this way. Whom do you represent? The buyer. I can't then disclose to the seller that I'm a transaction coordinator. See, when you really simplify it, you can't, because I'm already the buyer's agent. Therefore, I can't be the transaction coordinator. I'm a buyer's agent. Okay? Well, but Darwin, how do I get paid? Go ahead. The purchase agreement. I already have my compensation agreement. The buyer said, if any, whatever you get from the seller, which I'd like you to be able to do, will be credited toward that amount. If you can get all of it from now, by the way, is there any reason you couldn't say, seller to pay my 3% plus $395? Couldn't the seller pay all of it? They certainly could. It's compensation. Okay? So that was a key one. This is the situation that arises.
You were doing such a great job.
Oh, I love it. You're so good to have around. Yep, get it, Renee. It's, yeah, get that off of his nose, right? If you couldn't tell, I was just complimented. Actually, I think it was just good sales. All right, let me bring you another one. All right, let's see. I got to do this again here. Here's another scenario. And it deals with, again, as a buyer's agent, our compensation. So this, I'm going to say most of this is all the way through. You negotiated with the buyer your 3%. You find out the seller's only offering 2.5%. By the way, that happened after you presented the offer. So you didn't even know that's all they were offering, because the buyer said, here's my offer. I'm going to give them $315,000, but I need them to pay the 3%. So in negotiating with the agent, you say, well, I understand, but listen, they made $15,000 above your asking price, multiple offer situation, right? I said, is it the best offer or not? He said, well, gee, what if it doesn't appraise? That's a good thing to hear, actually, right? That means we're in the running, and he's concerned about it appraising for $315,000. So the negotiations happen with the agent, and verbally you agree that, look, if it reduces, we can talk, and I'd just take the 2.5%. So you've got that verbal agreement between you and the other agent. All right? So then you go out because you've won and you find major issues with the house. So you've negotiated a $15,000 lower price, you're at 300,000. Everybody good? Closing scheduled. Receive all the documents. And the listing agent goes, hey, wait a minute. I'm only getting 2.5, he's still getting 3. We said that if we had to drop the price, what do you do? Yeah. Hey, you should have got it in writing. I lie. By the way, that's true. They should have got it in writing from me if that was important. However, we all being ethical people, you're saying, yeah, you know what? We did agree to that. You can reduce it to 2.5. Are you still owed 3? What do you have to do? Go talk to the buyer saying, oh, by the way. Now, hope it all happens before closing. By the way, I'm giving you a scenario because all of it's happened except for the closing and the agent calling. But it was a great one to go, what would you do if it happened? And so it's just something to be able to think about as you go through there, because there's going to be all kinds of things. And so there's no, when we're talking agency and our compensation, there's no one way that we do everything. We have to be able to do, I'm going to use the term critical thinking. We got to know it all well enough that we can go, then here's what we would do. And often when you guys, your managers call me and say, hey, Darwin, here's a circumstance. What's your thoughts on this? I literally start talking out loud, and the more I talk, the more I come down to where it's not, well, it's A, B, or C. Normally it comes down to it's A, B, C. No, well, it's A or C. Whoop, no, it's C. Because we just go through that critical thinking. I think that's the way that we've always got to take a look at it. So that's what I've got for us for today. Again, next week, the plan is to have a full deep dive on earnest money deposits. If I'm right, I'm going to be in the Okemos office next week in the Lansing area. Feel free to be able to drop in. Come see me with that. And look, that's always subject to change. But I'll hold and just see if there's any other questions that maybe it came up for this week that we might answer quick. Anybody? Because these guys out in Zoom land take a little bit longer. All right. Hey, it's a great Tuesday. So you guys know me. This is the way we always need to finish. Go out and talk to a lot of people. We'll see you next week. And thanks everybody here in Lapeer land.